You're listening to The Manning Report with your host, James David Manning. The news behind the headlines.
Show me your taxes. Remember the old movie, Show Me the Money? Well, for many, many moons now, during the campaign and since Tribulation Trump has been the illegal president of the United States of America, people have been hankering to see his tax returns. There are several reasons why. Number one, they want to know if Trump is laundering money or, at the very least, got foreign influence or foreign income that could influence his policies. Number two, as to whether or not the recent tax bill passed going back last year, where $1.5 trillion was robbed out of the U.S. Treasury and given to 1% of America's wealthy people, wanted to know if somehow or another that tax bill and the way in which it was structured benefited Trump in a major way, that he was able to win a windfall in tax credits or tax deductions as a result of a bill that he wrote. And then beyond that, want to know whether Trump is wealthy as he says that he is. And the other thing, I think the looming question among John Q. public is, why is it that Trump will not release his tax return? By the way, that a wild-eyed Bernie Sanders hasn't released his tax returns either. But people want to know why Trump has not released his tax returns. Is it something that he's hiding? Is it perhaps he's not as wealthy as he says that he is? Or whether he's a tax cheat? Now, you'll have to remember, David K. Johnson, who is a professor up at Rochester, Syracuse University, has documented that Tribulation Trump has been sued twice. He's been taken to criminal tax court by New York City and New York State. And in both of those cases, Trump was found felonious in his tax filings by New York City and New York State. In fact, there were found forged documents of Trump's accountant, that Trump had stolen some papers off of his accountant's desk and had forged the accountant's signature onto statements regarding Trump's tax returns for the state of New York and the city of New York. We're going to bring that up to you at another time, but David K. Johnson is the one who is a law professor at Syracuse University, has documented that. We'll get that to you at another time. So there's a lot to be learned from Trump's tax returns. It's almost like going to a funeral of Trump. And that's why he has not shown his tax returns. But there is now, according to Richard Neal, who is the chairman of the House Ways and Means Committee. So, by the way, parenthetically, Charles Rangel used to be, when the Democrats were in power, used to be the chairman of the House Ways and Means Committee, which is a pretty powerful office for old Charlie Rangel. But no, Richard Neal is now the chairman, and what we understand, and I'm going to read you the letter, is that Trump is obligated to turn over, not Trump, but the IRS, to hell with Trump, the IRS commissioner is obligated to turn over Trump's tax returns without any kind of a delay. And and I'm going to read first the letter, then I'll have some commentary on the fact that absolutely there is no defense. Trump cannot stall this. He can't claim executive privilege. I'm going to read the letter. You see, it clearly outlines where Chairman Neal explains clearly that Trump's tax returns need to be turned over for the past 6 years, along with all associate organizations and holdings that Trump has. So let's read the letter. We got this letter from the Congress of the United States of America to the Honorable Charles P. Rettig, who is Commissioner of the Internal Revenue Service on Constitution Avenue there in Washington, D.C. And it reads, Dear Commissioner Rettig, the Committee on Ways and Means Committee has oversight and legislative authority over all federal tax laws. With this authority comes a responsibility to ensure that the Internal Revenue Service, known as the IRS, is enforcing the laws in a fair and impartial manner. Consistent with this authority, the committee is considering legislative proposals and conducting oversight related to our federal tax laws, including, but not limited to, the extent to which the IRS audits and enforces the federal tax laws against a president. Under the Internal Revenue Manual, individual income tax returns of a president, and by the way, this law and this acquisition of taxes have used on Richard Nixon, and it was discovered that Richard Nixon owed $500,000 in back taxes. It was also used against Bill Clinton and David Rockefeller. So it's been used before in an impartial way. Let me go back to the reading. That under the Internal Revenue Manual, individual income taxes of a president are subject to mandatory examination. I'm sorry, it was Gerald Ford, not Bill Clinton. Gerald Ford. Under the internal examination, but the practice is IRS policy and not codified in the federal tax laws. It is necessary for the committee to determine the scope of any such examination and whether it includes a review of underlying business activities required to be reported on the individual income tax returns. It goes on. So, Commissioner Neal writes, and I continue, pursuant to my authority, under Internal Revenue Code Section 6103, Caption F, for each of the tax years of 2013 through 2018, I request the following return information. The federal income tax returns of Donald J. Trump, number one. Number two, for each federal individual income tax return question above, a statement specifying, number A, whether such return is or was ever under any type of examination or audit. Now, you know, Tribulation Trump has been saying as soon as his audit is over, he's going to release his taxes. But he's never produced a letter stating that he's under audit. He's never produced, he's just been saying this for the last 4 years now, that he's under audit. But so the commissioner acknowledges that. B, it says the length of such examination or audit. And C, the applicable statute of limitations on such examination or audit. Number 4, the issues under examinations or audit. And E, the reason or reasons the return was selected for examination or audit. And F, the present status of each examination or audit to include the date and description of the most recent return or return information activity. But it goes on in part 4 of this letter, the federal income tax returns of the following entities as well, which includes the Donald J. Trump Irrevocable Trust, the DJT Holding LLC, the DJT Holdings Managing Member LLC, the DTTM Operations LLC, the DTTM Operations Manager Member Corporation, the LFD Acquisition Member Corporation, the LFD Acquisition LLC, and the Laddington Farm Club LLC, also doing business as Trump National Golf Course, Bedminster. So what is happening here now is absolutely, in the reading I just said, that it is mandatory that the federal government, no matter who the president is, that the House Ways and Means Committee examine the taxes of every president. And if there's a loophole, if there is a loophole in this, it will be that. Because what it says is that the federal laws consistent with the authority the committee is considering legislative proposal, and under the Internal Revenue Manual, individual income tax returns are subject to mandatory examination. if Trump is going to argue anything, and I'm not giving him any argument, his lawyers to pick on, a bone to pick, but if Trump is going to argue anything here, he'll have to argue, did the IRS examine every president since, by the way, this law was put into place during the time that Calvin Coolidge was president, and the Secretary of State at the time of Calvin Coolidge, that they were under suspicious of doing suspicious things. And in 1924, only the President of the United States could demand the tax returns of any individual, because that's private financial information. It cannot be even demanded by Freedom of Information Act. But in 1924, Congress got together and wrote this law that it is mandatory that the IRS examine every president's tax returns. Now, the question will remain, have the IRS examined every tax return of every president since the beginning of the law? And of course, the commission, the House Ways and Means Committee, will argue, well, no, because most presidents and presidential candidates who actually never became president released their tax returns, so there was no need to. So the argument's going to go back and forth. But effectively and essentially what this law says, and what Commissioner Chairman Neal is stating, is that there's no argument here. There's no executive privilege. There's no taking this matter to the court. It's already in the law that the IRS has the right to look at a president's tax return. And case closed. There are no ancillary ways in which Trump can get around this. So this is going to be very interesting to see how Trump, this is not up to Trump or to Steve Mnuchin, who is the chairman of the U.S. Treasury, Secretary of the U.S. Treasury. The letter goes out. The tax return is supposed to come in the same day. This is going to be very interesting. And what are they going to find out in Trump's tax return? What are they going to find out? I tell you one thing they're going to find out, that the boy is a money launderer and a drug dealer. They're going to find that out. They're going to find that out. They're also going to find out that Trump is not as wealthy as he says that he is. Not to mention that he's a tax cheat and probably doesn't give anything to charity. All of those things that's probably going to embarrass Trump. But it looks like, my friend, with this particular item right here, this has been the one linchpin that Trump has been hanging on to. I think that, we'll see. I'm sure Trump's going to put up some sort of fight. The rednecks are going to jump up and down. The Republicans are going to have hissy fits. They're going to go into conniptions to try to say this is unfair, it's wrong. But you'd have to wonder, why would anybody want to stop the House Ways and Means Committee from seeing, why would Chuck Grassley, why would Mitch McConnell, why would Tom Joyner, Jim Joyner, why would they want to stop the IRS from looking at Trump's tax return, unless they know that Trump's got something to hide? This is a bit of a news blog we do, looking at spiritual wickedness in high places for the most part, making some observations about it and giving people a biblical foundation to the way of interpreting, rather than have Sean Hannity or Laura Ingraham or Janine Pirro or Anderson Cooper or Rachel Maddow or Don Lemon, Rush Limbaugh interpret what's going on in the world. You come to me and I'll tell you based on what the Word of God says. They'll just give you their worldly, sinful view. But the Manning Report will tell you what God has said, whether to say yea or nay, whether to go or to stay. You'll be led by the word of Almighty God. Come to the Manning Report on a daily basis to interpret the spiritual wickedness in high places, because there's plenty of it that's going on. And so I'm the Lord's servant, James David Righteous Rebel Manning, and I'm here to serve you with news and information.